Okay, so I promised you an update in terms of what my latest tech stack looks like as I've been building more and more with AI. So here goes. So once I found a problem we're solving, and I talk about that extensively, so check out some of my other episodes if you want to know more about that. But I'm going to assume at this point, I already know the problem we're solving, and I basically have an idea of how I want to solve it. Once I have that, I use AI, typically Claude, and typically Claude, the web interface, usually with the latest model available, which is usually Sonnet 4.5 or Opus 4.5. Spoiler alert, Opus is crazy impressive, super helpful. However, you might burn through credits relatively quickly, and Sonnet's still pretty good. So those are my one and two. But I will go through the web interface and I will workshop basically requirements for what I'm looking for in terms of the look and feel. Now, this is basically my UI UX work. So I will take my context from the user interviews I did in my target market or whatever I captured to give me better context about the problem space and who it is I'm helping. I'll work with Claude to create those requirements, and those requirements will be framed from the perspective usually of a tool like Lovable. So Lovable is my preferred UI UX kind of design and front end build tool these days. Usually with React or Next.js or something like that. That's what I'm looking for from a tool like it. And I will get the requirements designed for Lovable from Claude, and then I will copy and paste those into the Lovable interface, interact with it via natural language to create kind of the design, look and feel for the application, in addition to at least my primary workflow, which is, basically the key part of the core value proposition for my SaaS product, and I'll make that clickable. I'll make that interactive. Sometimes I'll make that borderline functional, which is just crazy impressive from the perspective of a web-based tool like Lovable. If you haven't used that, please just go use that and become as much of an expert in it as you can. Be impressed. One thing I like to give it to show as part of a demo is like creating an Airbnb clone. Just like watch how close it will get with a one-shot prompt and not a whole lot of context. It's pretty ridiculous, but man, does that save a tremendous amount of time. So could talk about Lovable for days, but today I'm going to finish talking about the tech stack and we'll go deeper on different tools in future episodes. So I will get my UI UX where I want it. I will get my primary workflow down for the most part, and then I'll use functionality built into Lovable to basically sync what it's created in the form of version control with my GitHub account. So it'll create a repo for you and it'll do bi-directional syncing, which is super cool. But once you've linked it and into created basically a new repo on GitHub, you've got your version control kind of set up. So anything that Lovable's creating for you code-wise will be there, which is great. So now, once I've done that, I can continue to workshop that as much as I want once it's linked to the repo. And once Lovable makes updates to it, it'll push new updates to that repo. So basically, it makes new commits and it even gives you commit messages with descriptions. It's like crazy helpful. I'm thinking about from like years ago when I was doing software engineering work and all the stuff was done manually and how much of it can be done how well in an automated fashion now. And it's just still blowing my mind. But anyway, not to digress. So that's kind of like the front end work. I'll try to get the front end work, look and feel, all that kind of stuff done there. And then once that's pushed up to GitHub, I'll pull down the repo. So I'll clone the repo locally in my development environment. And that's when I switch over to using Cursor. So Cursor is my preferred kind of still development environment. If you don't know, Cursor is a fork of Visual Studio, which is Microsoft's basically integrated development environment or IDE. Unique element about Cursor though is it has its coding agent associated, which has got some, unique magic to it, some proprietary tech and stuff like that. But it does allow you to pick and choose specific models, which again, I'm pretty squarely in the camp of doing the vast majority of my coding work with the Claude Code models from Anthropic, which is usually Sonnet 4.5 or these days, and since it came out more so Opus 4.5 in terms of however much I've got capacity wise and my context windows and stuff like that. So that will be where I'll switch. I will get everything working locally and running in that environment based on the Lovable designs and take it from there basically in terms of how functional it is. And that's where I'll start to build out the other layers. So I'll figure out what I'll need based on what it is I'm building. If I just need simple like backend, REST API kind of stuff, I might stick with Next.js and I can basically just kind of add a database layer to it, which these days is most of the time Postgres, and I've used a lot of Supabase as well too. So that's another piece of the tech stack that I'm pretty happy with thus far. Then if I need more like back end capability stuff, I may build one out that's proper in Python or something like that as well also. But in terms of database, for the most part, it's usually something like Postgres, and I'm using Supabase a lot just because it's most convenient. So that covers most of the tech stack. The last piece I'll mention are the hosting elements. So for hosting, I've used mainly Vercel for the front end stuff, which is relatively easy to use as well also, and it's pretty functional and cost effective. And then Railway is what I've been using for a proper backend. So if I have an actual backend in something like Python or whatever, I'll use Railway. And then I mentioned already Supabase for my Postgres hosted database instances. So anyway, threw a lot of tech buzzwords at you and a few acronyms probably too, but I wanted to give you an idea like what my current tech stack looks like for how and what I'm building these days in terms of SaaS products myself. Let me know if you have any questions, and thanks for listening.